What does it mean to be a man in today's world? For generations, masculinity was defined by rigid roles: provider, protector, leader. But today, young men face a different reality. They're navigating shifting expectations, mental health challenges, and a society that often labels masculinity as either toxic or outdated. Enter Dylan Roos. Growing up in the shadow of AFL royalty, Dylan forged his own path. Not on the field, but in the world of personal development. Now, he's on a mission to redefine masculinity, helping young men step into power with confidence, self-awareness, and purpose. In this episode, we dive into the struggles young men face today, from mental health to mentorship, self-doubt to self-discovery. We discuss the importance of strong male role models, the impact of modern pressures, and how we can create a future where men thrive, not just survive. This is an important conversation for fathers, sons, and anyone invested in the next generation of men. Welcome to the Success Times Happiness podcast. Let's get into it. Dylan Roos, thank you so much for coming onto the show, mate.
Good to be here, mate. I'm glad we got to organise this. I wish I could be there in person, but
yes, we were waiting for a
technology.
while. We're waiting for a while to see you next time you come up the sunny coast, but nevertheless, we're here, and super stoked, mate. Because this is a topic where impacts everyone. Obviously, so crazily close to your heart and the business that you run. But I have 4 boys of my own, and my oldest is 11. I feel like we've done a great job getting him to that point, but now he's going into adolescence and into adulthood. It's scary, right? And so I guess we'll start off with this whole piece about, and it's certainly in the media, about how young men are struggling, and whether it's the gap between the education piece as they go from school to universities, their mental health. You know, the suicide rate for men is 4 times that of women. Their lack of intimate relationships and even lack of friendships in a close center group of friends. I want to know what your take is at the moment on what do you see at the coalface of where their struggles are. And I'd love to also hear about your story today, about how you've come from, where you've come from in your life. To be able to be this sort of true north for a lot of young men.
It's a really strange time to be alive for everyone. Like, man, it's a strange time to be alive just in general. And obviously the current social dynamics are just not playing in nicely with young men and men in particular. And as you said, you only really need to look at just a couple of areas where you start to really see, like, young men in particular are just not doing well. I think the biggest wake up call for me when I first started working in the space back in 2018, I think it was, 2018 is when I first started working in the men's space, is that the number one most likely way that you or I would die is if we killed ourselves. Like, statistically speaking, if you were a gambling man and you had to place a bet and you wanted to be safe, you'd bet that while they'd just hang themselves, they'd kill themselves. And I think because we've had so much awareness now around mental health, it's been such a big conversation around awareness this, awareness that, I don't think that lands enough for people. Like, that's a huge statistic, but we've all heard it. I'm sure that's not a surprise to anyone. I'm sure everyone's heard that 18 to 36-year-old men, the most likely way that they'll die is by suicide. That's insane. That's an insane society to be a part of.
And it's fact that it's socially not accepted, but it's socially it's just fact. It's just what it is.
You can make a very strong argument for it being socially accepted, because what's happened is we looked at women's problems and it took us a while. It took us a while, but we looked at women's problems and we said, okay, we need to fix these problems. And the last 30 to 40 years, and maybe I'll speak a little bit more recently in my own life, the last 20 years, we really, as a society, had a concerted effort to look at what problems women were facing and find solutions for them. We said, as a collective, as a society, we need to do better for women. Let's work on it. Now, there are still very real problems that women are facing today. I don't want it to be this competition between, well, women are struggling here, so who cares about men, or men are struggling here, so who cares about women.
Mm.
That's not my point. But we made a big effort to really help and change. And as I said, it took a while, but we got there. So now we look at every metric, or a lot of metrics. Women graduating into high school, graduating high school, going into college. Women are outperforming men. Women outperforming men in the workforce. They're earning more than men now. They're starting to really change the narrative on the gender pay gap. Where, when you take a very large, broad scale look, it looks like men are making more money than women. But when you start to dissect the information more, you start to look at, oh crap, like women are starting to get into the workforce, make more money than men, do better. And the younger generation in particular are really struggling. Suicide. We talked about mental illnesses. So living at home, like young men are not moving out of home. They're not taking up responsibility. They're not going out into the world. 53% of young men between, what was the age group? 18 to 25, I think it was, maybe even 30. 53% of men haven't had sex in the last 12 months. And whilst you can make a debate around morality of sleeping around, that's not my point. It's more young men want to be sleeping with women and they're
Mm.
not. And so there's a real problem here where we have the really big statistic that I started with, being men are killing themselves at a much higher rate than anyone else. And we haven't really done much. We don't, like, to your point around it's kind of accepted. We don't, like, there's not really an outrage. There's not really a big men's movement. There's not a men's cabinet in the Australian government. There's not, these spaces that we've set up, or committees that we've set up to go, hey, why are men killing themselves? How do we actually
Mm.
solve this and look at it through a lens of what can we do to better to support men?
It's obviously a delicate space because women there's been so many issues at play for the females, and as you say, it's not a gender race or gender sort of thing, but God, it's hard to articulate. But it's this position of like, well, they've
But
been
even
prejudiced for
that,
so long.
even you finding it difficult to find the words is indicative of the situation, because men are scared to say, "Hey, we have a fucking problem here. Men are killing
Yeah.
themselves." Like, we can't even. It's like, oh, but we don't want to step on the toes of women and women's problems, and it's like that's not what we're. But we have to be able to. You're a man. I'm a man. You have a son. I have a son. And you and I, like, I've definitely, I've been working in this space for a while, where I've gotten a lot more confident just having these conversations. But certainly when I started,
Mm.
it was a tiptoe. Oh, I don't want to upset the feminists, and I don't want to upset women, and I need to. It's like, hey, I'm, as I said, I've been in this space for a while. It's like, if you and I are struggling, who are good men, good values, we want to take care of people. We're not coming from this tyrannical patriarchy that we've been told exists. We're like, hey, we care about women, we care about men. And then when we start to talk about men, we tiptoe. There's this tiptoeing.
This is a problem for men. Let's
Yeah,
fix it. It doesn't have to be at the expense of the female
yeah,
rights or the female pursuit
no, no,
of their
exactly.
of the issues that we all need to fix with them. But
Yeah.
for sure, it's a delicate position. And then you I guess also, Dylan, you bring in this whole idea of toxic masculinity, right? And
Mm,
that also just murkies the water of
yeah.
because and I know that a lot of so you're and I'm wanting to hear your story, but like the service that you provide is to provide really wholesome masculinity, or to grab
Yeah.
that, to reclaim that power of masculinity, which is
Mm,
separate and completely different to the toxic side, where obviously a lot of people play in.
yeah. I mean, you have conversations, and because I like to keep it in the real world. There's a lot of stuff online for young men in particular they're consuming that sounds good. It hits a chord for young men, and it's why they go into I don't know if you're familiar with this term, but the red pill community. It's a very basically
Yep.
scooping up all the young men, right? All the young men that feel dejected from society because of the things that we're talking about, they typically go towards the red pill community, because there's a lot of highly successful, somewhat good looking, in shape men talking to men and saying, okay, guys, yeah, the world's fucked, and the world doesn't care about you, and the world doesn't care about men's problems. So come over here, and we can dive into the red pill community, because I have a lot of thoughts about it. But it's really interesting to be a young man today and to not feel heard and not feel like they can be masculine. That's been the messaging. And you have conversations with people who, I somewhat disagree with on their philosophies in general. And you ask them, well, what does healthy masculinity look like? And they rattle off a lot of feminine traits like kindness, caring, empathetic. It's like, yes, those are great traits for men to have, but they're not masculine traits, right? Those are feminine traits. So what is healthy masculinity? And they say, again, these feminine traits. So it's like, okay, so there is no such thing as healthy masculinity. It's actually just healthy femininity. They can't define what healthy masculinity is. Like aggression channeled in the right way is healthy. Competition channeled in the right way is good. What you said, helping men feel confident and powerful, that's a good thing. Again, but we've got this bad taste, or people have this bad taste from what they perceived as a tyrannical masculine energy, which is instead of it being a healthy aggression, it's outright aggression. Instead of it being a healthy competition, it's how do I dominate at all costs and become a multi-squillionaire while stepping on all the little guys. It's the provider as is the healthy, it's the controlling narcissist in the unhealthy. And particularly
Mm.
for young women who are driving probably the opposite conversation, or even in the American politics, you'd call it the left-leaning or liberal men. They are pushing this idea that there is no such thing as healthy masculinity, that masculinity in itself is toxic. And whilst I used to think, oh, that's just a minority, like that's kind of the extreme left, which it is the extreme left, it's quite a common philosophy when you start to really talk to people about, well, what is healthy masculinity? What does it look like? It always comes back to femininity. It's not masculinity. And so I used to hate it when I first stepped into the space, and I didn't want to say it, but we've really feminized masculinity now. We've really feminized what it means to be a good man. And there are so few good men that are able to articulate and live as healthy men. They stand for boundaries, they're emotionally intelligent, they stand up for their families or their friends, they have hard conversations. And the really interesting thing is that the strong men or the good masculine men are actually the answers to all the problems that we see in society. We talk about when you step into the women's space, we need men to call out other men's behavior. We need men to be standing up
Mm.
for women's rights and abuse against men. It's like, you know who those men are? Those are the strong protector men. They're the ones that have controlled their aggressions. They're the ones that if I go to a pub and I bump into you, or you bump into my girlfriend and you start having to go at my girlfriend, I'm not going to stand for that, because I at least see myself as the healthy masculine. I'm going to step in front of my partner and I'm going to go, hey, buddy, knock it off. Or if you're my friend and you do something that I don't like, I'm going to say, hey, mate, that's not okay. But because
Mm.
we've demonized masculinity, because we've demonized confrontation, healthy confrontation,
Mm.
demonized aggression and anger, which can be healthy, we don't see that anymore. The men have retracted from these spaces. They haven't lent in, because you need to have that healthy masculinity behind you to say, hang on, I'm not putting up with this. This is not okay. The amount of videos I see now online where I just saw one where this man's walking past like an outdoor cafe, reaches over, grabs a lady's bag and rips it and wrestles this lady. And the two guys are sitting here. Two guys are sitting here. They get up and leave. They walk away. They don't want to be a part of it. And I'm looking at this going, that is weak masculinity to me. Not that I use the term almost ever. That's toxic masculinity. You're being weak. Like, you need to stand up. You
Mm.
need to stand. There's someone attacking someone weaker. There's a man attacking a woman. It's the man's job and the man's duty and the man's responsibility to step in and take care of that situation. And we've lost those words like no, like nobility and duty and responsibility. We've feminized them and we watered them down, and we don't let men be in that masculine role. So it's a really, as I said, interesting time to be alive for everyone. And it's a really difficult time right now for men to be alive, because the messaging over the last 20, 30 years, when we talk about masculinity, has only been associated with toxic. The only time you hear masculinity spoken about is
Now,
toxic masculinity.
now I know that you and we'll get. I really do want to dive into your story, but and
Yep.
the platform and the business you have. But and you deal with adolescents and young 20-year-olds in that sort of
Yep.
space. And I bring this up because a very close friend of mine sort of is struggling with this at the moment, and he has, 4 or 5 kids himself, and he's a corporate, and he sees his role as my job is, and the way that he can express his, and he's a family man as well. However, wish you want to define that, but I guess for him is to be at the sports and all the things for the kids. But
Yep.
he feels this, he's being torn because my job is to provide. My job is to sacrifice basically his own
Yep.
other things he'd otherwise want to go surfing or do whatever he wants to do. But
Yep.
he feels like his responsibility is to provide for the family. And then
Yep.
on the other side, he's expressed that his partner has sort of saying, well, I wish you were home more. I wish you were wish you cared, not cared more, but I think it was like, I wish you'd be around more so it's easier for me and so you can be more around the family. And then this is this position where it's like, well, he finds it almost, and I can understand that you get to this place where you're like, he feels like he can't win. He's like, well,
Yeah.
what am I, who am I trying to be here? And it's like, is it
Yep.
to be at the home and support my wife forever and a day, to do everything that's possible at home versus going to
Yep.
work and doing all the things in the corporate space. So he finds it tremendously challenging to be a man right now
Yeah.
because almost, a generation ago or two, for better or for worse, the roles were very defined, right?
Yeah.
That more often than not, and this is sort of a broad brush approach, that it's the male goes and does the job, the mother
Yeah.
does the mothering role and supports the family in the home. Clear boundaries, whether or not they're happy or otherwise satisfied is another story, but at least, yeah. And then I feel sorry for my friend because he's such a good human, he's such a good man,
Yeah.
but he's so confused as to what his actual role should be.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many good points, and I want to figure out which point I want to start with. But it's it's incredibly common. That's a really common story at the moment going on. So your friend is not alone. And it's certainly something that I felt as well within my relationship, and especially as I stepped into fatherhood too. So it is really common. I would say that there's a couple pieces. One, if you're communicating with your partner around expectations and setting up, like in the work that we do, we talk about a family culture code. So just like in businesses, you have your values, but we go a step further and we help flesh out the behaviors of those values as well.
Yeah.
So you kind of need to run a family like a business, in that, and everyone's going to set this up differently. I will speak through my personal beliefs, and I understand that this is not going to be reflective of certainly current society. But me, what I try to do in my work, in my life, the way that I think about things, and the way that I present information is that I look for success. I look for, well, what's successful? Who has the most successful relationships? Who is the most successful businessman? Who is the most? I look because success leaves clues, and what I found is that if when I look through this lens, I see that the man can really step up inside the household and inside his life and adopt as much responsibility as can and be the CEO role of his family. And the wife is a, like, you could call it a co-CEO role, but it again, it's like there's still a different role that the partner plays. Then the ship can run really smoothly, but then the responsibility lies on the man to run the ship well. And what that looks like is weekly family meetings. Hey guys, this is what my week looks like. I'm not going to be around much. But I'm going to get to the training. I'm going to get to this training. I'm going to drop off the kids here. Does this look okay? And it's particularly communicating with with your partner around this and going, hey, for the next 3 months, for the next 6 months, for the next 2 years, for the next 3 years, I need to be really heavily business focused because I want to provide, I want to set my family up. But you have to communicate it. We had Mark Burris just come on into the program and speak with I do some stuff with Dad and his leadership work, and he was quite candid and he was quite open about how his first relationship failed and he had to do a lot of repairing with his kids because he was so work focused. And his takeaway was the lack of communication. He just didn't communicate enough with his family that, hey, I love you and I need to be spending more time at work right now because that's the season that I'm in. So I think that
Mm.
can solve the problem, is just better communication. I think having a family or a partner that's on board with the mission.
And that's a communication piece as well, right?
Yeah, it is. But we were very much on board. We knew what was going on. We knew that dad would communicate with us or mum would communicate with us. Hey, like especially as we got older, it was like the demon's job. Like for dad to take the coaching role at the demons, that wasn't his decision. That was our decision. That was the family's decision. It was okay, guys. Here's what I'm being presented with. What do we
Yeah,
think?
that's awesome.
And it was really a family input because it affected the whole family. And even when we were younger, it was like dad's got to travel to play in Perth, but he would get the red eye flight back from Perth and land at 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning and come to our footy games and do it. So there is a lot of sacrifice, and that is the healthy masculine that we're talking about. The healthy masculine sacrifices for his families. But the juggling is really, really difficult. So, communication, how can you communicate with your partner? How can you find a partner that's on board? How can you find a partner that's not setting up lose-lose situations for you? And the final thing that I'll say, which changed my life, is the book No More Mr. Nice Guy. I think every single man needs to pick up the book No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover. It is a life-changing book. It nails at least 90 to 95% of the male population at the moment, and it gives a lot of great solutions for how to navigate this. And as I was reading it, it just nailed me. And then I recommended it to 3 or 4 friends, and they all said the same thing. It's nailed me. And so I think that is a great starting point, or starting point, end point. It's an awesome book to kind of touch on what you're talking about, because there's always going to be elements of responsibility that we can take on, like continual, again, to stay in alignment with my philosophy. Like how can we as men continue to take on as much responsibility as we can handle and as we can bear? And I think part of that is realizing that there might be some communication certainly in my life, this was the case, and maybe even in your friends and in men listening, where we say we'll do things. Yeah, I'll pick up the kids. I've got to go to work. I'll do the cooking. I'll do the dishes. I'll vacuum. I'll do all these things because we want to do this stuff, but we end up just resenting our partner for it, and we end up spending ourselves. We end up, in Robert Glover calls them covered contracts. And essentially what they are is, I'll do something nice for you because I want to be seen as the nice guy, but I won't communicate what it is that I want reciprocated. And if I don't get my needs met or reciprocated, I'll start to resent you or I'll be angry at you. And I probably won't communicate that directly with you. So the healthy man will say, okay, I'll kids up from school, no worries. Can I get 30 minutes after dinner though to just send some emails off and get some work done because I'll need to do that, right? That's healthy communication. Hopefully you have a partner that goes, yep, that's fine. What the nice guy tends to do is go, yeah, I'll pick up the kids from work, gets home, has dinner, and then goes, okay, I need to go do emails. And wife might be like, oh, hang on, I need you to help clean up dinner. And it's like, oh, well, I pick the kids up from work, from school, and now I can't even get 30 minutes to myself. Like, seriously, I'm doing everything for this family. It's like, dude, that's just like, that's not healthy masculinity. That's not good
Probably
communication.
holds it, holds it, right? Swallows
Or
it and just
holds it,
builds that resentment.
and builds
Yeah.
and builds and builds and builds. Yeah, 100%. That's super common too. And then eventually it blows up, or then the relationship breaks down, and the guy thinks he's done everything right, but it's like, ooh, go pick up this book, and you might you might find, like for me, that was me. I had this relationship breakdown last year with my partner, and coming out of it, it was like, fucking hell, like I did everything right. I was this, I was that. Like, it's not my fault. It's all her fault. And then I read this book and I was like, oh, okay, that's not true. Like, and another great word that I picked up was co-creation, where every single one of us is co-creating a relationship. And if we're co-creating a relationship, then there's responsibility on us to improve it, right? There's something that we're doing that can make an improvement. Now, as again, not to harp too much on the book, but the book says, as you're reading it, your relationship will do one or two things. It'll become the best relationship you've ever had, and it will skyrocket, or you guys will separate. And because Because if I am co-creating and I am taking responsibility and I'm noticing my patterns and my stuff, but the other partner isn't, or the other partner doesn't like my changes, I kind of have a
Mm.
responsibility to leave that relationship and be like, well, I'm showing up and I'm not going to be in this relationship anymore. So, or it gets really good. Your partner goes, finally, I speak to women all the time, and where are all the good men, and rah 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 rah. It's like then you find a partner and you communicate clearly. You're not this nice guy, and your partner will be like, oh my gosh, finally, where have you been my whole life? So I
Mm.
think it's as I said, to kind of round out your question, is like it's super common, this this idea of, in the past, all men needed to do was provide. That was it, provide and
Mm.
protect, right?
Yep.
That's what we expected of men. And to your point, like, were they happy? Were we happier that way? Were we not? I would make the argument we were happier with better defined gender roles. I think that you can again look at the statistics around mental health and suicide in both sexes and say, well, we're just getting, and that's a very multifaceted problem, I know. But I think one of the things that helped it was clearer roles inside the family home, because with clearer roles, you know what you need to do. And I think men are starting to go, well, what do I need to do? Like, how do I, what is my role? Right? Like, what,
Mm.
just tell me what my role is and I'll happily do it. For most men, we want to, we want to be good men. At least in my experience, when I talk to my friends, most of the time it's like, fucking hell, what can I be doing? What, like, shit, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Like, what else can I be doing? Like, we're looking for answers. I just tell women that we need some more empathy or support or understanding or patience as we step into this new expectation, because it probably wasn't role modeled to us by our fathers. It definitely wasn't role modeled to us from our grandfathers. And so we're now having to be the first generation that is learning, having to learn very quickly what emotional intelligence is, what communication is, how to show up for my partner and my family in ways that the majority of men in the past didn't necessarily, wasn't required of them to do so. Particularly, there certainly wasn't the pressure from their partner to show up in these ways. And I think it's good things. I think you look at the statistics, I think millennial men are spending 200 to 400% more time with their kids. So there's certainly positives that have come from this progression. Um, but men are getting a lot of, we're not getting a lot of understanding, empathy, and patience to get us there. Like, hey, I'm trying. For most men, we're trying our best. We're trying to get it right. Certainly, the percentage of men who are not trying, don't care,
There's
and not very good,
um
leave them. You know, they're not a part of this conversation.
when you look at the demographic that you primarily work with in the adolescents to young 20s, there'd be a lot of them disenfranchised a bit, and
Oh yeah.
not knowing who to look up to, and who to be mentored by, I guess, as a primary mentor. Then you, as you said, you look at these sort of red pills and you go, and then that's what success means, or that's what success looks like. And it may be the case that they see themselves as being that they're only able to achieve that type of success, uh, and they've got to be this, for lack of a better phrase, that this toxic masculinity traits to achieve that ultimate success. But I would have thought that the greater challenge is to be a really good man and to
Yeah.
be supremely successful at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive.
No, they're not. And I think to define masculinity in society, like the broader social conversation right now, it's not. It's a hard, like, it's not a good masculinity. Like, it's make money, be in shape, and sleep with lots of women. They're the three things that we're now defining men by. And it's the worst form of masculinity, because there's nothing about being a good person, taking care of others, being a servant leader, sacrificing. Like, there isn't much conversation in the red pill space for, so men talking to men. But you pull up any street interview, any podcast, like, you've got these huge platforms now where we're interviewing women of 18 to 30, and they're saying the same thing. What do you look for in a man? Oh, he needs to make 6 figures. He needs to be 6'5", and it's like these are the messages that men are also receiving from women. Is this and that, as I said at the start, I like to keep things in real life. When you have individual conversations with females, in my experience, that have not been the answers that I've been getting. But we've put a platform, we've got social media, and we've given these idiots, that's what they are, they're idiots, a platform, and they go to millions of people. So young men are being bombarded with messages that, oh my gosh, all women care about is height, money, and sex. And I'm being told by the mentors that I look up to that, yeah, I need to make as much money as I can, get in as best shape as I can, sleep with as many women as I can. So as a father I have a 2.5-year-old, there is that you could come up to me and say, Dylan, I'll give you $1 billion to give your son an iPhone, and I'd say you can keep the $1 billion. There's not, you want to solve 90% of modern problems for kids today. Don't give them an iPhone. Don't give them a computer. Don't give them an iPad. Just don't give them unfettered access to the entire world. That's probably a pretty good starting point for raising kids because it's all rubbish. It's not, it's the majority of it is rubbish. They're too immature to understand. Do you know how difficult it is and how hard it is as a man to figure out masculinity? I struggle with it. I'm
Oh,
30,
yeah, yeah,
right? And
yeah.
you
And
you
you
want to
practice
give
it.
you want to
Yeah,
give
yeah.
a and I practice it. And I struggle with being a man of integrity and walking my path and sacrificing and looking after others. And I'm 30. You want to you want to give a 12-year-old access to these
The internet.
the internet that has unlimited information. They have no idea what they're consuming, and it's 90% rubbish. Your son is not able to delineate between a positive masculine message and a negative masculine message. It becomes, well, who's delivering the message? And so your Andrew Tates and your red pill community, they what did you want as a young man? You know, I want to make a lot of money, I want to be ripped and shredded, and I want to get the girls. So you just have a bunch of these young men that seek out mentors that are everywhere preaching that exact thing. This is how you be a good
Mm.
man, make heaps of money and get in great shape. And it's like they're the messages that young men are receiving. Then, as I said earlier, not to repeat myself, they listen to women, and what are women saying? He needs to make $500,000 a year. He needs to make $1
Mm.
million a year. He needs to be 6'5", and he needs to, be in incredible shape. And it's like, yeah, men are really dejected. What I said, 53% of young men in the last 12 months haven't had sex. That, again, not the morality around sleeping around, more just that's a warning sign. Men are just like, I'm checking out of society. Like
Yeah.
that's the
They're
first thing, and then
detaching. Yeah.
they're detaching. They're spending so much time online playing video games and scrolling Instagram. Like I'm going to go on a massive tangent now, even though I've been doing it the whole time. So 1 in 10 women between the age of 18 and 35 in the US are on OnlyFans. 1 in 10. So 10% of the dating population is on only is a sex worker. 10%. So men are looking at that because the red pill community is pushing that statistic, but then they're pushing that to justify everything else
Mm.
that I said. Instead of what I try to do with my work and what I try to do with Prince the King is go, guys, this is all rubbish. There are great women out there that are worthy of being your girlfriend, worthy of being marriage material. You just have to find it. Yes, work on yourself. Like, yes, get in shape, make good money. Like, yes, these are important things, but be a good human. Like, stick up for the little guy, take care of vulnerable people, look after women and children. Like, you have a duty to protect those around you. Really good, be strong, be confident. Like, not a bad thing to feel powerful and competent. These are good things, right?
Tell me about Prince to King.
So it's a mentoring program for boys, high school and up. So if they're 12, that's fine as long as they're in year 7. But you'll see my marketing materials pretty much 13 to 23. We work with boys older as well. It's been going for 4 years. We've had over 200 boys come through the program and have successful mentorships. And we've kind of developed what I call the integrated man method. or I call him Tim the King, TIMM the King, the integrated man method. And what that looks like is essentially what I think are the four staples for young men and men and masculinity. And it's self-awareness, um, emotional embodiment, purpose, and backbone or grit. I've kind of taken some of Steve Biddulph's work, who's a great child psychologist. He talks about masculinity basically just being heart and backbone, right? So for me, it's emotional embodiment and backbone, but those two things being really important. And then for me, purpose is huge for young men. You have to find as a man, you need purpose. And then self-awareness is this new superpower that we keep hearing about all the time in TED Talks and podcasts and books and stuff. And I think that's where I see healthy masculinity kind of really sprout forward is from a layer of self-awareness. So we've been doing it for 4 years. We're in the 5th year. We mentor these young men, but we've also built out a really great support network for families as well. And
because I imagine
obviously,
a fair amount of these is the parents are the ones that are engaging, right, on behalf of the
100% of the time. Yeah, every single time it's the parents reaching out, getting the mentor for their sons, and almost 100% of the time the sons don't want it. They're young men. They want to do it on their own. They're trying to figure their way out. But once they're in the program and they've chatted to their coach 2 to 4 times, they love it. Young men here's the one thing we can take from the Andrew Tate. Young men need mentors. They need them. It's not an option. It's not something that's nice to have.
And even
they
I
need
think
them.
Jordan Peterson has said recently that he that you need mentors, male mentors in your life outside of your family as well.
Need it, yeah.
That's really important, and that's where growing up for me, I didn't have that in the family in any event, but my mum put me through so much sport, and I had some incredible male, and through school, but incredible male role models through coaches and teachers that I think, and as well as like neighbors of the street, like just by happenstance or even by purpose from mum, but that really helped shape my adolescence, and that comes back to your sport piece. But I think man, 200 kids, that's incredible work.
Yeah, it's been really obviously fulfilling and humbling, and I get so emotional. I cried on a sales call just the other day because there's stories that I get to hear from parents around what they're going through and struggling with, and they're trying their best and they care so much for their kids and boys, and it's incredibly emotional, like, because I get an insight into what is really happening inside families, and then I step out of it and I hear the social conversation, and the social conversation is missing the mark. If you were trying to miss the mark, that it is almost what it seems like they're doing. They're deliberately trying to miss the mark in terms of what's going on. And so I am very proud of the work that we've been able to do, but I'm also very humbled. I'm very humbled that parents choose me or my business to help work with their sons. There's a lot of great practitioners out there. Obviously, we kind of position ourselves as the experts in the field now. We've been doing it a while, and we know what we're doing. But I'm so grateful for everyone that chooses to work with us. It is incredibly humbling, because what is more important than your kids? Nothing. So it's like, wow, you're trusting 100%. Us with your kids, and that's not something that any of my team takes lightly. But I was going to mention, to your point around having these mentors, something that I tell all parents, and I think it puts them at ease a little bit, because they most of them know who my father is, and kind of makes them feel, I think, less guilty or less shame. Parenting has a lot of shame, like, oh, I'm a bad parent, and oh my gosh, what do I do? And I think whenever I tell this story, it makes them all go like, okay, it's not me. Like, so obviously me and my brother wanted to be AFL footballers growing up. We had an AFL coach as a father, premiership coach at that as well. second we turned 13, me first and then my brother, like we stopped listening to dad. We thought he was an idiot. We didn't think he knew anything. We thought we knew better than him. And
Mm,
that's
the
what
rite of passage.
happens. That is what happens. You go from 0 to 12. Oh my gosh, my dad's a hero. 13 to hopefully 13 to 18, and we can dive into why this is kind of extended now, but 13 to 23, 25, dad's an idiot, mum's an idiot, and then you come back out the other side and you go, oh, they're human beings and they have their own shit
Mm,
and they tried their best, just like I'm trying to do. And great, now I'll go to them for advice and okay, maybe I will listen to them some more. But it's universal. You can do things to make the 13 to 18 better, which involves getting a mentor. Like we've become very nuclear in that we expect parents to be able to do everything for their kids. And whilst you should be trying to do everything for your kids, it's not possible. You can't, because they're going to turn 13 and they're not going to want to listen to you. So you can either bang your head against a wall for 5 to 10 years and be like, you need to listen to me, you need to listen to me, or you can just take what I think is the easy option and go, oh, you've stopped listening to me. Cool. Let me find
mm.
people that I know and trust
That you will
that you
listen
will
to
listen
for
to.
sure.
Like
Yeah, I love that.
take the stress off of your own shoulders as a parent. They're not listening to you. What's the main complaint of a parent? What's the number one
Kids aren't
complaint? They
listening
don't
to
listen.
me.
So why the
Yeah.
stop talking? Go get someone else to talk to them.
Yeah,
Like go get a coach.
that they'll listen to for
That they
sure.
will listen to. Like you can still don't stop delivering the message, but don't put the emotional burden on the message
Mm.
being received. Go get a mentor. Go find
Dylan,
sporting coaches. Like
so
they'll
good,
listen.
man.
Still deliver the message. It's still important, but they're not listening to you. You know that. You complain to your friends. You complain to the other parents. You can complain on the calls with me. It's like that this is. What's your solution? To just keep talking at them? Like you go find someone else because they will listen to other people. My parents, I only found this out as an adult. They deliberately did this. I just thought as a kid, like, oh wow, it's happened, sort of thing. But my parents would be telling me, giving me advice for 6 months, 3 to 6 months or whatever. I'm not listening. And then somehow I'd be getting lunch with one of their friends who obviously I was close with, and he'd weave into the conversation what my parents clearly told him to weave in, but
The
I had
same
no
message.
idea.
Yeah,
The same message, and
yeah.
I'm sitting there going, oh, yeah, I guess that is, yeah, okay, that's a good idea. And I'd come home to my parents and I'd be like, I remember Brett Stevens was my dad's best mate. I got lunch with him once. That sticks in my memory, and he gave me this advice, and I came back and I was like, oh, Moose said I should probably do this. I think I'm going to do this. And my parents have been telling me to do this for 6 months, and it's like one coffee,
Yeah, perfect.
one coffee, one
Perfect.
lunch, and I'm doing it. It's like, so I think you can either be right or you can just get the outcome that you want. So
Yeah, agreed. And I think also I'm coming from a place where I've got such a strong bond with my 11-year-old. Like we are tight, really tight, and have always been. And he's wise beyond his years already, but I am naive to think that come 13, 14, I'm going to be the dickhead dad, and he doesn't know anything sort of person, and I'm ready. I'm so looking forward to enlisting your services, mate, and and to hopefully any support is good support for him.
Yeah, and I think like there's a really powerful scene in Dune. I think the first Dune movie. Have you seen that with Timothy Chalamet? It's
I
pretty
haven't.
big.
No.
Mate, you're old now. You're out of this, but it's a really great
Said
scene.
39, not 40,
Dylan. Just YouTube it. YouTube.
We're in the same decade.
I know we are, right? Mate, I feel old too. I'll try to find it now for the listeners. But if you YouTube like Dune father-son scene or father, giving advice scene, and this really powerful scene where I'll try to find it while we're talking. But it basically, long story short, it's about a king and a prince, and the prince is like, what if I don't want to be king? Like, what if I don't? And the dad just goes, well, if you don't, then you'll be all I've ever needed you to be, and that is my son. And I get emotional just like talking about it, because it's like Man,
Whoa,
is
yeah.
that not what every young boy wants to hear? Just all I need
Yeah.
is to be enough. That's it. That's all every young man wants to hear. Every man wants to hear is you are enough just as is. And I think that if dads can be less controlling about like, oh my God, I've been here, I've done that. Like I need to, buddy, I did the same thing that you're doing. Like, and we try to control. It comes across as a bit too controlling, and then mums as well can be too fear. Again, stereotyping and broad stroking it. Mums can be a bit too fear based. Like the mum's role is to let go, and the mum's role as they become boys and transitioning into manhood is basically saying I need to be okay as a mother. If I'm a mother, I need to be okay in my own emotions because that's what it is. I can't handle seeing my son get hurt. I can't. That's a
Mm.
you problem. That's not a your son problem. Like that's a you problem. Um, and so for mums, it's like you need to release the control from a fear of getting hurt. And from the dads, it's a releasing of control of like, oh, I don't want you to become me because you can become so much more. You can do so much better. Like learn from my mistakes. I've
Mm.
been there. I've done that. And taken to the extremes, it comes across as controlling. So if you can, at least when I think about it with my son, when he gets to that age, I want him to make mistakes. I want him to go out into the world. I want him to experience things firsthand because I still remember it didn't matter what my dad said.
Mm.
I needed to experience the mistake myself. For some of it, some of them you do
Yourself.
listen to the
Yeah.
mentor. Some of them you do listen to your dad. Some of them you don't need to make yourself.
Sure.
But certainly my experience with myself, my brother, my friends, the work that I do, men almost need to experience the pain of the mistake to go, oh, don't do that again. And if you have the mentor in place, that's what the mentor helps with. Because if I go through a painful experience, I might not learn the right lesson. I might learn the wrong lesson because I am 15 and I don't understand how to interpret the lesson. But if I have a mentor who goes, what happened today? Oh, well, the teacher had a go at me for speaking in class, but my mate started the conversation and he was the one that should have been in trouble, but I ended up getting into trouble, so fuck her. And it's like, buddy, that's not the lesson from this. You
Yeah.
know, that's let's rewind a
Mm.
bit and let's learn that like, were you talking in class? Yes. What's the rule in class? Don't talk. End of story, buddy. Like, be a man. And you language it through that. Be a man.
Yeah.
Man up. Like the manning up thing, I've changed. I've gone back and forth so many times. Like, don't say it. Do say it. Don't say it. Do say it. I'm in the like say it, but you have to give context to what manning up means. So I will word it in my clients. I will word it in my work of like, dude, you like for the older boys, not the younger boys, but it might look like something like, buddy, like you're afraid of your emotions. Like you are actually afraid of them and you need to be brave enough to confront your emotions. That instead of you need to embrace your emotions, buddy. It's okay to cry. Like even I'm like, ew, get away from me. But
Mm.
if I word it in a masculine way and I say, hey, you're afraid. I don't want to be afraid. I'm a man. I'm brave. You're afraid of your emotions, and you need to be brave enough to confront your emotions and feel them, whatever that looks like. And the strongest men I know cry, and the strongest and bravest men I know are in touch with their emotions. That rewires the conversation for boys because they are looking out into the world and seeing the red pill community sprout like, don't show your emotions. They probably have a mum
Yeah.
who is very much like show your emotions, and they probably have a dad that isn't that emotionally connected either. So his whole worldview is, well, dad doesn't really share much about his, like if you come home from work as a father and you had a stressful day and you're not feeling very good, the best thing you can say to your son is tell the truth. Hey dad, how are you? Actually, not.
Yeah. Yeah. Not
I'm
kick the dog.
okay. I'm okay, buddy. But I actually did have a tough day today. I am pretty stressed out, and
Yeah.
I'm a little bit irritable, a little bit angry. But I'm gonna be okay. I still think you have a responsibility to your kids and your family to still end on. But dad's okay. like, because there is an element of masculinity being
You
the
can't,
rock,
you can't,
but
you can't give the
no,
burden. Yeah, you can't give the
no,
burden onto the children for sure.
no, definitely not. But you definitely want to be modeling, because what's a parent's big complaint? Oh, my son doesn't communicate with me. He doesn't tell me how he's going. He doesn't share. It's like, well, what have you modeled
Yeah,
for the last 13 years? Have you been
for
sharing with
sure.
him? Have you modeled that, like, dad's a bit stressed out? Dad's sad. Hey, mummy, hey, mum and dad had an argument last night and we're both a little bit sad today. So that's why we're a little bit, down in the dumps, right? But we'll be
Yeah,
okay. Like, mummy and daddy are good. Like, what have you modeled to your kids? And if you've modeled it, guess
yeah,
what you'll have? You'll have a 13-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 15-year-old that will say, Dad, I had a tough day at school today. I don't really want to talk about it right now. I'll be okay.
yeah.
That's better than, like, good, shrug,
I love that.
whatever. But you have to model it. Can't
Slam the door.
slam
Yeah,
the door. Everything's a skill set. Every single thing is a skill set. So when you look at your kid, you go, he has a skill set deficiency in communication. What does that mean? I haven't communicated well enough. Because as a parent, I need to take responsibility.
yeah,
Okay, how do I communicate better? Hey, buddy, like, dad would take us into work. Again, a little bit, I understand not everyone can do that, but we are
and go to the
transitioning a
gym
lot
for
in the
work.
workforce where, like, we are transitioning more where workplaces are probably more kid friendly and family friendly. We've got a bit more better values, but, like, we would go into the workplace and see dad at work, so we could kind of see him work hard. You got to remember, like, for most of your kids, they say goodbye to you, they go to school, they work hard, they come home, they haven't
Yeah,
seen you work the 8 hour day, they haven't seen you, like, work hard, so they think adulthood is like, wow, daddy gets to go to work and daddy gets to have this fun job, or mummy, but, like, really, it's shit. We're working and it's like, it's hard work and it's stressful and all these
it's
things.
hard work. Yeah,
Yeah, but, like, but they're stuck in their world of, like, well, school sucks and I don't want to go to school. Like, you're making me go to school. So, like, I can't wait to be an adult. And it's like, dude.
yeah. They don't have a comparison. They don't have
No.
a direct comparison that maybe dad and mum thinks that their work sucks sometimes as well, and that's
Yeah,
okay.
exactly. And I think if you can communicate that to your kids, like, yeah, hey, buddy, I this is also your this is why parenting is so hard, because every single thing that you do and say is being modeled. So, like, to the
Mm,
minutest
get
detail.
that.
So that's why there's no perfect parent. That's why don't stress yourself out over the small things. That's why you're doing the best that you can. All these messages are very important to keep in mind. But I'm always just thinking, like, okay, well, what am I modeling to Raina? Like, even as I've noticed that I definitely have stuff around when he's crying a lot or his emotions. Like, there's stuff that bottles up for me around, like, don't cry. And I'm like, and I have to remind myself, Dylan, he's 2.5. He can cry. Like, I have to check myself
Yeah,
and my beliefs around, like, I need to prepare him for the world because that's my job. And, like, he needs to learn as quickly as possible that, like, hey, the world's tough and stuff. And, but I also need to model, like, so this is where the gentle parenting comes in. Say, hey, buddy, you having some big emotions now? My parents never said to me when I was crying, hey, Dylan, are you having some big emotions
yeah. It's
right
got some
now?
big emotions.
you know,
Yeah, yeah,
like, they
yeah,
were
yeah.
probably like, knock it off, cut that out. Do you need to go to your
Yeah,
room? Like, and that's not like, boo hoo, Dylan, your parents sucked. It's a product of the times. They were doing the best they could with the parenting that they got, and they definitely did better than their parents. And now it's my responsibility to do better than them. And, like, great. And guess what? Now they're grandparents, and they get to learn from me. They get to see how I parent Rainer, and they
mm,
get to be like, holy shit, like, he's 2.5 years old and he can recognize emotions and he can label his own emotions, and he's like, so they get to see it. So they're, oh, okay, cool. This is how we communicate now. So, but there's going to be
love that
there's going to be consequences that I leave to Rainer that he has to work on with a coach and a mentor and a therapist and
for sure.
all
And then
that stuff
his job will be to
to be
work
better.
hard
Yeah,
to be a better father as well, right? Yeah.
exactly.
For those listening and to go back, it is on June father son talk scene. My father said, "A good man doesn't seek to lead, but he's called to it, and he
Mm.
answers. But if your answer is no, you'll still be the only thing I've ever needed you to be." and that's my son. So great reference.
Goosebumps.
I love that.
It did.
All right.
Goosebumps.
Before you go, 5 quick
Yes.
questions I haven't prepped you for. So
Let's do it.
what does success mean to you?
Be a good man, be a good father, be a good husband, be a good son, be a good brother, be a good friend. Like, be a good person. That's been just drilled into me. Yeah.
What does happiness mean to you in Dylan Roos's mind?
Taking care of my responsibilities and taking care of those around me.
Third question, it might be Mr. Glover's book, but your most recommended book to read?
For men, No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover. For women, The Queen's Code by Alison Armstrong.
4 guests that you'd invite to dinner, not friends or family. They could be alive, or you bring them back to life.
Oh man, alive or okay. I usually take like 30 minutes. I love these sort of questions. I usually take 30 minutes to really think out every guess. So I know I'm gonna be disappointed with my answers, but I'll go Jordan Peterson, Michael Jordan, Genghis Khan, and let's get some humor in there. Let's go with oh geez. It would be Joe Rogan or Donald Trump. Like one of those in that room. They would be my 4. Right. That'd be a great conversation.
Fantastic. And then finally, Dylan, someone that you think would be a good person for us to interview next on the show.
Carlos, he's up on the Sunshine Coast as well. He runs a men's coaching program. He's good. Carlos, or Danny Kennedy.
Dylan, thank you so much, mate, for coming onto the show. And really looking forward to catching up next time, and hopefully when you're on the coast. Cheers, mate. That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. Next time you're speaking with your sons, feel free to share this episode. It really means a lot. Until next time, peace.